Hello, hi, my name is Miss Amber, and I'm here with your English 11A reading selection resource today. For those of you who are not familiar with the reading selection resource, the goal is to have someone go through the reading selections and sort of break down what's happening in them to make them a little easier to understand. Now, the way that I'm going to approach doing this is going to include stopping to look up words, to basically give you guys the tools to get in the habit to do things on your own. We have a lot of students that don't stop to look up words, that sort of gloss over things that they don't understand. Sometimes you don't have time, sometimes you have work or you might have kids, or you might be babysitting, or you might just be in a difficult environment that makes it a little hard for you to understand the reading selections. And when you get frustrated, you just sort of click and keep going. I'm hoping that by breaking down some of these reading selections for you and to give you at least a general idea of what's happening in the reading selection, you'll be able to have an easier time with some of the lesson activities. And additionally, you'll have a better time with answering questions about the poems or stories that you're reading when you get to the mastery test. I'm also going to cover some things that pop up from the analysis of these reading selections to help you put some things together about what we read in the text. So we're going to get started with the very first lesson of English 11A, which is Perspectives in American Literature. And there are three readings for this. The three readings for this are basically from The Dark Tower by Countee Cullen, I Hear America Singing by Walt Whitman, and I Too by Langston Hughes. So we're going to read through all of these. These are poems, so there are more of them in this lesson. Usually, if the lesson has a large story in it, you'll only have that one. But since these poems are fairly short, there are three of them in this lesson. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and we'll just get started. Now, in this lesson, hopefully those of you who are joining have already gone through the lesson once before. We are not starting at the beginning of the lesson and going through what we're doing is jumping straight into the selection. Now, you can tell when you've hit a selection, a reading selection in Edmentum, because you'll have this blue link here. That is usually how it goes. Pretty much, if you see one of those, it's a link that they want you to open. And not all the time, but most of the time, these links are going to be opening up your reading selection. So we're going to go ahead and click on that very specific link. Just a second here, plugging in my mouse. And we're going to just click on it and it'll open this up. Now, because this is a poem, they didn't formulate a full page for it. This is like a public domain poem. It's been out for a long time. So they don't have to get permission to reprint it. And since there are other resources that have it, they've got this outside link that leads outside of the website. If you're having trouble, if you're having trouble getting to this website or you're having an issue, please contact your mentor or any of the tech lines if you have them in your records. So this poem is called From the Dark Tower. So what we're going to do, especially because this is a poem, we're going to read through it once uninterrupted. Now, if we were reading through like a bigger story, what I would do is read through maybe like the first paragraph and then go back or something like that. But since this is a poem, we're going to read through it first so that you can hear the rhythm of the words. Remember that poetry is something that happens with not just the way it's written, but also how you hear it. So we're going to do that and then go back over it and see if there are any words that need to be looked up or that are difficult to understand. And then we'll take it from there. I'm going to do this step by step as if I were a student. So when we get to words that are big, that are complex, we're going to be taking our time to look them up and try to fit together what things mean. So without further ado, we have the Dark Tower. It says, "We shall not always plant while others reap the golden increment of bursting fruit, not always countenance abject and mute that lesser men should hold their brothers cheap. Not everlastingly while others sleep shall we beguile their limbs with mellow flute, not always bend to some more subtle brute. We were not made to eternally weep. The night whose sable breast relieves the stark, white stars is no less lovely being dark, and there are buds that cannot bloom at all in light, but crumple, piteous, and fall. In so in the dark we hide the heart that bleeds, and wait and tend our agonizing seeds." Sorry about that. I lost my place near the end there. So there are some words that give you hints that this is not a poem about great things. One of the hints is in the actual title. There's the word dark here. Dark is usually referring to things that are kind of scary or uh, hard to see, which is usually like a sort of a hindrance to people, an obstacle that people have to overcome. Even just looking at words that are easy to spot, we've got weep here. To weep is to cry uncontrollably. We have agonizing. When you are in agony, that means you're in a lot of pain. We've also got bleeding here. We have heart that bleeds. We've got crumple, which is, falling. So there's a lot of language here. So just going through the lines one by one, we're going to try to break this down. Luckily, this is a short poem, and it's a little easier to go through this line by line than some of the other readings. So we have, "We shall not always plant while others reap." So we know what planting is when you put seeds in the ground. If you've ever heard the phrase, "you reap what you sow," it means you get back what you put in, right? So if we use that context clues, we're saying we shall not, it means we will not. Shall is like an old way of saying will. We shall not always put things in the ground while others reap. So we're basically saying we're not always going to be working to put things in while others are getting things out. And then we have the rest of the lines. They kind of go together. "We shall not plant while others reap the golden increment of bursting fruit." So increment here is a pretty big word. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy this here, and we're going to open up a tab and actually just search for it. We're going to paste and go. And if we look here at the dictionary, and I mean, if you have a physical dictionary at your home, you can also, open it up and look it up. But just most of you, our laptops are on your phone doing classes, so we're just doing it this way. There are other ways to do it. So we have an increase or addition, so we're adding things, especially one of a series on a fixed scale. So they give you an example because that might be a little difficult to understand. The inmate's pay can escalate in 5-cent increments to a maximum of 90 cents an hour. So what this is telling you, and if you look at the similar words here, we have increase, addition, we already have those words in here, gain, augmentation, step up, or supplement. So important things that we have here is a step up. So an increment is when you're able to step up at a regular rate. So if something is increasing, for example, by 10 cents per hour, that means that 10 cents is the increment. It's the piece that is being stepped up. So if we move back, we'll close that tab. If we move back here, the golden increment of bursting fruit. So it's saying that people are reaping or getting out golden increments of bursting fruit. So when you plant things, fruit is what you want, right? You want the fruit, you want the plant that's flowering, you want the fruit that comes from the plant. So this is supposed to represent the reward that you would normally get for planting. If you're growing plants, usually when you harvest or reap them, you get the benefit of what you planted if you took care of those things, right? So reading these two lines together, "We shall not always plant while others reap the golden increment of bursting fruit." What this is saying is that while others are getting rewards for work that we've done, the we that's here in this first line, we are not always going to keep working if other people are just going to benefit from what we're doing. So then we have not always countenance, abject, and mute, that lesser men should hold their brothers cheap. So we've got countenance here. That's our first big word. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to search for countenance. We've got a new tab here. This is a person's face or facial expression. So his impenetrable eyes and inscrutable countenance gave little away. So this is a little difficult to understand because they've got other bigger words here. But impenetrable means you can't get into it, and inscrutable means that you can't read it. So this is basically saying his expression is hard to read and difficult to sort of like break into to understand. So you can't get into his eyes and how they're looking to see if they're giving away how he's feeling. And the rest of his expression is not readable either. So countenance is facial expression. So here we have not always countenance, abject, and mute. So we're saying something about how people carry themselves, how they look, right? With their facial expressions. So it'll help if we know what abject is, right? So if we search for abject, we get something bad experienced or present to maximum degree. And we also have of a person or their behavior completely without pride or dignity. So abject means without pride or dignity, or something bad or present, something bad experienced or present to the maximum degree. So basically, abject is when you are completely something. You are usually completely without pride or dignity down here. So an abject apology is an apology given without pride or dignity. You're putting yourself down while you're doing it. So if we move back to this poem here, we have not always countenance, so that's how we look, without pride, right? Abject, without dignity. And mute. Mute means to not be speaking. If someone's mute, that means that they cannot talk. And we can look this up just to be sure as well. That's a thing that we can do. But yeah, it says refraining, that means holding back from speech, or temporarily speechless. So if you're mute, it means you're not talking. So just these 4 lines, we have, we shall not plant while others reap the golden increment of bursting fruit, not always countenance, abject, and mute, that lesser men should hold their brothers cheap. So not always, they're saying that they, and in this poem, he's referring to really people of color, Black people in America, will not always be like self-defeating, putting themselves down, or without dignity. That lesser men should hold their brothers cheap. So he's saying that lesser men, so men who are better, who are not better than they are, should hold their brothers cheap. So holding your brother cheap means that you didn't spend a lot of money on it, you didn't spend a lot of time on it, right? So hold their brothers cheap, what they're saying is lesser men, people who are not good enough, are holding people who are supposed to be their brothers. In this case, they're talking about relationships between people in upper class and lower class. And in this case, because of the time period, whites who are higher class, and especially Black people, and also Black people of a lower class. So holding their brothers cheap means that they are not sharing the things that are of value, the bursting fruit, with their fellow brothers. So this part of the stanza here is saying that they, Black people in this case, are not always going to do work while other people take the benefits of it. The fruit is the benefit of the work that they're doing. And then he adds, they are not always going to be without dignity or pride, while men who are clearly not morally good are gonna hold back their rewards from them. Holding your brother's cheap means not giving your brothers enough. You're being cheap with what you give them. So these first four lines are talking about uh people, especially Black people and people who are lower class, not standing by anymore while people are mistreating them. That's what we're getting from these four lines. So down here, we have not everlasting while others sleep. Shall we beguile their limbs with mellow flute? So everlasting is something that lasts forever. So not everlastingly says that they will not be doing this forever, right? So not everlastingly while others sleep. Shall we beguile? And if we look up beguile, I think that's the most difficult word in this stanza. Beguile means to charm or enchant. Yes. So uh not everlastingly. So they're saying not forever while other people sleep, are we going to charm their, like, people who are of higher class and are well to do, their limbs with mellow flute. So when they say limbs, limbs are like your arms and your legs, right? So they're extremities of the body. Things that poke out from your body are usually considered limbs. And we also think of limbs when we think of trees. Trees have limbs because their branches like poke out from the main tree, right? So when they say beguile their limbs with mellow flute, the flute is an instrument, right? So if we're connecting this together with the limbs, we're talking about charming someone's limbs. In a fancy way, what he's saying is that the flute uh, equals music. So the music charms people's bodies or limbs to dance. It makes people want to move. So he's saying no longer while others sleep, sleep as in ignoring the problems that these people have, are they going to continue to charm people with music from their flutes. And then not always bend to some more subtle brute. So brute is basically someone who is brutal. It has the same base word as brutal. So if you've heard that word before, subtle brute means basically a subtle, hard to see or tell way that someone is like roughing someone up or manhandling them. So what they're saying in this one line is not always bend. That means like to cave, to fold, right? To give in to some more subtle brute. So what they're not going to do is doing more work while other people take the rewards. They are not going to keep going without dignity while their rewards are being withheld from them. They're not going to charm people with music while they continue to ignore them or sleep. And they are not going to bend or fold or give in to people who subtly try to push them around. That's what they mean, or secretly try to push them around. That's what subtle brute means. And then here we have, we were not made to eternally weep. So eternally and everlastingly mean basically the same thing. Eternally means forever, and weep is crying. So he's saying we were not made to eternally weep. We were not made to cry forever. So down here at the bottom, we have the night whose sable breast relieves the stark. White stars no less lovely being dark. So what he's saying here is the night, we know nighttime, whose sable breast. So we're talking, sable is a color. Sable is like a very dark color. So if we were to search for it, sable is usually the dark color of fur in mammals. And the name sable comes from the animal sable, but we use it so often that it's become related to the color. So if we were to look at sable and color in search, we get tincture black, right? So sable is a type of black. If we go to images here, they're going to give us more animal pelts. So these are kind of the browns that we're looking for here. Sable is supposed to be like a darker brown than what's normally found in some animals. So when they say sable breast, right, he's creating the illusion of night being a person. So sable breast meaning like their chest is brown colored, right? So the knight whose sable breast relieves the stark. Um, and the stark here is a type of bird. So basically, what they're saying here is that relieving the stark means that the stark can go away. So like when someone is um, replacing someone else at a shift, that's called relief, right? Like so your relief is here. They are replacing you so that you can go do other things. You can clock out, you can go home, right? So if the knight is relieving the stark, they're associating the stark, that particular bird, with the sun, and saying that the night, which is supposed to be like tender, comforting, with a sable or dark colored breast, is telling the daytime or the stark that they can go. This is a metaphor. So they're comparing the night um, to having like person type quality. So we have sable breast, we're giving it skin color, we're giving it fur color, right? And they're relieving the stark. So the night comes to push away the daytime. So we're relating this stark, which is a daytime bird. It's a bird that flies during the day. Um, so we're relating those ideas. They're making these comparisons so that the poem can sound a little more beautiful. It wouldn't be as striking for this person to just say, the night came and chased away the dark, right? He's trying to be a little more descriptive. So the night whose sable or dark colored breast relieves the stark, which is the daytime, a daytime bird. White stars is no less lovely being dark. So the white stars in the sky are not any less lovely when it's dark outside. So in this line, he's referring to the fact that stars burn all the time. Even though we can't see them during the day because the sun is so bright, the stars are burning all the time. So he's taking this moment to make the statement that the white stars are not any less pretty or beautiful when it's dark outside. So this is a subtle statement that he's making basically about Black people in society. He's basically trying to say with this idea that things being dark don't make them any less pretty. And that includes people of color, and in this particular case, American or African Americans. So there are no buds that cannot bloom at all in light, but crumple piteous and fall. So there are no buds. Buds are basically the little like circular pods on a plant that bloom into flowers. So there are buds that cannot bloom at all in light. So he's also adding to the idea of the beauty of people of color with darker skin by saying that there are some flowers that only bloom at night. And in light, they crumple piteous. Piteous means pitiful. And we can look that up just to make sure. Yeah, so deserving or arousing pity. So something that deserves your pity. So he's saying that some flowers don't bloom in the light and only bloom at night. And in light, they wither, they're pitiful, and they fall. And so in the dark, we hide the heart that bleeds and wait and tend our agonizing seeds. So here he's switching it up a little bit and not just talking about the night as it relates to being beautiful and not reflecting on people of color, but he's also saying that in the dark, those people who have darker skin hide the heart that bleeds. They're hiding their hurt, right? And wait and tend our agonizing seeds. So he's saying that they have to hide and take care of each other and take care of themselves to deal with the hurt that comes to them every day, with the people from this first paragraph up here taking and claiming the rewards for work that they've put in. So if you notice through this paragraph, there's a whole motif of plants the whole way through. We're talking about planting things and getting the benefit of those plants. So he carries that metaphor for the work that people of color put in, and especially African Americans, through this whole poem. So the long story short, if we were to wrap this up just in a couple of sentences, From the Dark Tower is a poem about how the world is unfair to African Americans in the US at the time, and how people of color and African Americans have to hide their hurt and basically wait for things to get better, um, and that they should, because being dark, being black, being a person of color is not a bad thing. Alrighty. So that was quite a bit. So we're going to go into just a little bit of the analysis here. And then we'll call it a video and we'll resume with the I Hear America Singing in the next one. So here on slide 7, they give us a little bit of an analysis here. When Cullen speaks of planting while others reap and standing abject, remember that means without dignity and mute, he is speaking about the racial injustices present in US society. And then it continues, as these injustices have changed over time, the American identity has also shifted, and those changes are in turn reflected in American literature. So this is just one example in this lesson about perspectives of how people in different points in time viewed the US. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. Now, this is a reminder, just if you come across something that you don't understand while you're reading, especially words or phrases, you're always going to want to take time to reread those phrases, to look things up and see if you can fit together those pieces. Try to think of, especially when you're dealing with poems, think of them the same way that you do as song lyrics. Sometimes there are references in these songs and in these poems that you won't get. Sometimes you have to go through life or watch a lecture like this one and be told what the reference is so you can go back and look and say, oh, I get that now. That makes sense. So don't feel bad if you're having a difficult time. That's what these videos are for. Just take your time, go through it. In the next video, I'll be covering I Hear America Singing. So feel free to seek out the link for that one or go to the next one and on this sheet, or ask your mentor, however it is you're getting this link, and we'll resume there. Thank you very much for sitting through this. This is Miss Amber signing off, and good luck with the rest of your English class.